Across the oceans of the globe, the navies of the superpowers conduct a relentless hunt for each other's submarines. Every day, ships and aircraft with high-technology sensors probe the ocean's depth for the elusive submarine. It is not difficult to understand why. A single ballistic missile submarine carries nuclear-tipped missiles with firepower equivalent to every weapon used in World War II. In the event of a war, a ballistic missile submarine could single-handedly devastate nearly every large city of either the United States or the Soviet Union. In this program, Video Ordnance will take a look at both attack submarines and missile submarines, how they operate, and the sophisticated tools that hunt them. Attack submarines are the descendants of the legendary submarines and U-boats of World War II. They are designed to attack enemy submarines and surface warships with torpedoes. But torpedoes have changed greatly since World War II. Submarines used to have to fire 3 or 4 torpedoes at a target to have a good chance of hitting it. But modern torpedoes are guided. Even in the unlikely case of missing on their first pass, they can be steered back to attack again and again. Modern attack submarines can also fire special anti-ship missiles. These are launched out of the torpedo tubes in special watertight canisters. When the canisters reach the surface, the missile ejects and is steered to its target by radar guidance. There are 2 main types of attack submarines: diesel-powered submarines and nuclear-powered submarines. Diesel-powered submarines, like those in use since World War I, spend much of their time near the surface. They have to come up near the surface to get air for their engines and to replenish their electric batteries. Captain John Moore commanded diesel submarines in the Royal Navy.
Diesel submarine itself can be very quiet. It does require, however, to recharge its batteries from time to time, and so that is a disadvantage. But with modern batteries, the length of time of charging has been greatly reduced, and it is primarily on the passage to and from base to operating area that the dangers occur. I think there's far less danger than some people imagine when the submarine is actually on patrol. The nuclear submarine, of course, has the enormous advantage of unlimited range.
But it is still very dangerous for submarines to operate near the surface. They have no hull armor, and even minor damage can sink them. Modern aircraft radar is so precise it can sometimes find submarines when only their periscope or snorkel tube is poking up above the water's surface. Nuclear propulsion allows a submarine to remain hidden underwater for its entire patrol. Stealth is a submarine's main shield, and nuclear propulsion has strengthened this shield immeasurably. Dr. Norman Friedman, a consultant to the U.S. Navy and noted author on submarine development, describes the limitations of the diesel submarine and the advantages of nuclear propulsion.
The main difference is in the sustained speed. If you read in a reference book about some submarine making, say, 20 knots underwater, what you're really learning about is a short burst speed for a diesel sub. He's operating on batteries. He's using up most of his battery power in one fast shot, say for half hour, an hour, even 15 minutes in some cases. That isn't enough for him to catch a fast warship. And we're talking basically about the speed with which he can connect with his target. With a nuclear sub, he can sustain that speed basically forever. Therefore, if he's fast enough to meet an enemy warship running at high speed, he can connect. And that's what's revolutionary about nuclear power, that you can keep it up forever.
Nuclear submarines are much faster underwater than diesel submarines and have an unlimited endurance. And they are so fast underwater they can even keep up with surface warships. A diesel submarine can operate fully submerged for only a limited period of time. A diesel submarine has to wait for a target to come into its lair. A nuclear attack submarine can seek out an enemy. Captain Richard Sharp commanded a nuclear attack submarine. He compares diesel submarines to nuclear submarines.
The comparison has been made between the Model T Ford and the Rolls-Royce, and I think that perhaps is overstating the case. But the essential limitation of the diesel submarine has always been that its target had to come to it. It was put in a fairly static area, and then whether it was in the anti-submarine or the anti-shipping row, the target would have to come to it. And once the target had gone past, the potential target had gone past, then that was the end of the engagement. The nuclear, of course, can pick and choose the time of his engaging his target, and if he misses the first time, can go around again. So the entire, I suppose the right word for it is the initiative has passed entirely now to the nuclear submarine.
The submarine's main advantage over surface warships is stealth. An underwater submarine can sneak up on an unwary opponent with little risk of discovery. It is so easy to hide a submarine because it is so difficult to see underwater. Sunlight only penetrates a few dozen yards into seawater. At the depths where submarines operate, it is inky black. Radio waves and radar beams don't travel through water very well at all. The only form of energy that travels through water is sound. Sonar is an electronic means to use sound to detect underwater objects. It is an electronic equivalent of the techniques used by dolphins and whales to navigate and hunt prey.
During World War I, you find, at least in the Allied navies, the use of sound to detect subs. Now, this is low-frequency sound, what you can actually hear with your ear. After World War I, there's a lot of work on very high-frequency sound, which becomes sonar. And the reason they like high frequency is that it allows you to make a very concentrated beam, so you can actually say he's over there instead of he's there someplace. And you find that in active service by the late 20s. You find it used a great deal during World War II. After World War II, you find them reverting to the lower frequency sound with the bigger sonars because you can see a lot further. And that's where we are now.
Sonar operates in two fashions, as passive sonar and as active sonar. Passive sonar is like an electronic ear, simply listening for telltale sounds from submarines, like their engine noises. Active sonar emits an intense low-frequency sound beam which bounces off underwater objects, like submarines, and returns an echo to the sonar operator. By means of computer processing, the location and range of the submarine can be determined from the return echo. But even with the most sophisticated sonars, it is very difficult to locate submarines. Sound travels very unevenly through water. Oceans have layers of water with different temperatures and different densities. Sound waves can bounce off these layers or become trapped in unexpected ways. The ocean may seem like a silent world to humans, but it is full of low-frequency animal sounds, like the natural sonars of whales or the shrill beeps of shrimp. A good submarine commander knows how to exploit the subtle irregularities of the ocean environment to hide his ship from snooping electronic sensors. The World War II submarine relied on its periscope to find and attack ships. Modern submarines still have periscopes, but they have come to rely on sonars as their main means of sensing the ocean world around them. The modern attack submarine has a large sonar fitted in its bow. This allows it to locate not only surface warships, but other submarines as well.
I think you rely on sonar to provide you with your information. A periscope has a very limited range, and it's possibly of use as a means of identifying a surface target. But if it's an anti-submarine thing, of course, it is quite useless. It's valuable, I think, if you're close in shore, but normally I think you would run your attack primarily on your sonar information with very little recourse to the periscope.
Submarine crew have always been a special breed. Modern submarines are not as cramped and uncomfortable as those from the 1930s, like the one we see here, but submarine duty means life in the bowels of a great machine. Nearly a third of the submarine is taken up by the engine and other propulsion systems. The submarine is controlled from the bridge area under the sail. This is where the steering controls, periscope, and navigation equipment is located. Unlike a surface warship, a submarine operates in a three-dimensional world. Its steering controls are more like those of an airplane than a surface ship's. But there are no windows. The submarine's only contact with the dark sea outside is its array of electronic sensors and navigation equipment. Traditionally, the submarine had its torpedo tubes located in front of the submarine, but modern submarines have their sonar located there, so the torpedo tubes are now often located at the sides. On missile submarines, the missile tubes take up the entire center section of the submarine. Life in a submarine is very different than on a surface ship. Since the advent of nuclear propulsion, nearly the whole patrol is spent underwater. Attack submarine patrols are often short, only a few weeks. But missile submarines go off on patrols of 2 months or more, their crew seeing only the insides of their cramped submarine. Without the reminder of the sun's dawn, daily life on a submarine has its own rhythm. On American subs, the crewmen live an 18-hour cycle, 6 hours of work and 12 hours off. Submarine crew are all volunteers. They require a combination of high technical skills to operate their sophisticated equipment and an even disposition to exist in such a stress-filled environment. David Steigman served in the U.S. Navy as an assistant operations officer aboard a sub-hunting frigate. He comments on the difference in the life of a sailor aboard submarines and surface warships.
There are several differences between serving aboard a surface ship or a submarine. The first is, quite honestly, the ocean and the sky. Even if you're working in a ship's office or a boiler room aboard a surface ship, you can come out at some point and see the stars, see the ocean, see the sky, the broad horizon and a perspective. A submarine is a narrow steel tube. Another key difference is seasickness and ability to stay healthy. Submarines, once they're down deep, are very stable, very calm. There are several laws to draw people into the submarine service. One is the pride of being in an elite unit. Submariners in most Western navies are volunteers. They have to want to go where they are. There is a rigorous selection process, a 3 to 6 month training process. In the case of some officers, it might be 2 years before one joins one's first submarine.
The primary weapons of ballistic missile submarines are strategic nuclear missiles, not torpedoes. These subs are nicknamed boomers in the United States Navy. They remain hidden in the seas as a silent reminder that any surprise attack against the United States would inevitably lead to unbearable retaliation.
For an American, a ballistic missile submarine is something that provides a secure deterrent. The Russians find it very difficult to sink. Therefore, we have something the Russians can't be sure of eliminating early in a war. Therefore, they would be discouraged from playing with nuclear weapons themselves. On the other hand, the Russians seem to believe that their ballistic missile subs are fairly easy to sink. So they make tremendous efforts to protect them. And a lot of our naval strategy, as it's developed, has been to provide sufficient threat to those ballistic missile subs to keep the other Soviet submarines in home waters protecting them.
Submarines are part of a strategic triad of subs, bombers, and land-based missiles. Because of their missile tubes, they are much larger ships than attack submarines. The main reason for placing such missiles on submarines is that they are much easier to hide. Strategic missiles in land-based silos can be located by spy satellites, and in the event of war can easily be targeted. But missile submarines are constantly on the move, and they are very difficult to detect underwater. Today's ballistic missile submarines are armed with between 16 and 24 missiles. Each missile can have up to 8 separate nuclear warheads. The weapons carried on an Ohio-class submarine are equivalent to 19 million tons of high explosive, or about 1,300 times the explosive force of the Hiroshima bomb. The superpowers have invested billions of dollars in these submarines with the expectation that they are nearly invulnerable to attack. If a foolproof way could be found to detect these submarines, it would upset the strategic balance of power. As a result, the Soviet Union and the United States spend billions of rubles and dollars each year to find better ways to hunt each other's submarines and in ways to hide their own submarines. A submarine's enemies include aircraft and surface ships, but the most dangerous enemies of submarines are other submarines.
Far and away, the submarine is the most effective member of the anti-submarine team. It is the only platform that can match the other man at his own game, that can outguess the other man, that can think in the same way as the other man, and indeed has the equipment and the 24-hour-a-day mentality, which of course is so essential in the modern undersea warfare battle. You simply cannot fly out there, do your thing, and come back again. It just isn't like that. It's a very slow attrition, and the submarine is best at that. But without being chauvinistic, they all do have a part to play. There's no question about that. And given some circumstances, a surface ship or an aircraft unquestionably does have the edge, but not in most.
Aircraft and surface ships also pose a threat. Surface warships have a number of weapons at their disposal to attack submarines. Until the Second World War, the main anti-submarine weapon was the depth charge. But today it is the torpedo, or torpedo-carrying missile.
Oh, guided torpedoes are absolutely essential, because for any particular range, if the submarine is fast, unless you have some guidance, you'll get away. So think of this bomb that's falling into the water, and the submarine is just sitting there, running along quietly. He can hear it plop into the water. Now he starts to run. The bomb takes a certain amount of time to get to sink down to where the sub is. The faster the submarine is, the deeper he is, the better the chance that he won't be there anymore when the bomb arrives and tries to go off. If, on the other hand, it's a homing torpedo, it runs after him. And if it's fast enough, it has a fair chance of catching him. So that as the submarines got faster, say by the mid-50s, it became very difficult to imagine anything other than a guided torpedo, so it becomes absolutely essential.
But a warship's most effective anti-submarine weapon is the helicopter.
An ASW helicopter's role is basically to act as a pouncer. He'll be stationed on a frigate or destroyer. If the destroyer has information from its towed array or its active sonar, they might put up a helicopter to use its dipping sonar to get a final solution. Also, since today's sonars have ranges far in excess of what a destroyer or frigate's weapons would be, once you have the information of where the target is, the helicopter will be put up to fly out to wherever the submarine is and drop a torpedo.
Helicopters can hover over a suspected submarine layer and then carefully lower a dipping sonar into the water. The dipping sonar acts just like the sonar on a ship or submarine, but it is less powerful. Once a submarine is detected, it can be attacked with a homing torpedo. Helicopters are used in concert with the sonars mounted on the warship. Helicopters have become one of the primary means used by warships to attack submarines. For longer-ranged operations, fixed-wing aircraft are used. Jet-propelled submarine hunters like the S-3 Viking operate off aircraft carriers. Their role is to protect the fleet from submarine attack. They can carry out longer missions much further from the fleet than helicopters. There are also larger land-based submarine hunters like the American P-3 Orion. While propeller propulsion may seem out of date in an age of jets and missiles, appearances are very deceiving. The propeller propulsion is very efficient and allows these aircraft to operate on long missions, often more than 10 hours in the air. These aircraft are crammed with a sophisticated array of highly secret detection and analysis devices. Anti-submarine aircraft like the P-3 Orion here travel too fast and too high to use a dipping sonar. Instead, they use sonar buoys. Sonar buoys are miniature sonar systems with a small float that can be dropped from an airplane. They contain small radios that transmit sounds back to the computer on the airplane. An anti-submarine aircraft lays a small pattern of these miniature sonar ears into the water, and the airplane's computer can triangulate the location of the submarine from the direction of its sound. These aircraft also carry a special type of metal detector in their tails, called a MAD boom, for magnetic anomaly detector. This detector helps to precisely locate the submarine by sensing the infinitesimal electromagnetic field of its metal hull. The most secret submarine hunting systems are the ocean floor devices like the American SOSUS. The SOSUS is a chain of sonar devices laid along the seabed of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. It forms a barrier which Soviet submarines must pass through to enter the Atlantic. When they do, the SOSUS electronic ears pick up their passage. Submarine warfare is a cunning contest demanding flawless technological expertise. An attack submarine's high speed can be an important advantage, but it can also be a risk, since high speed invariably makes the submarine noisier and easier for an enemy to find. A powerful sonar is an efficient tool to find targets, but used carelessly, its distinctive pings can give away a submarine's position to enemy sonars. It requires a subtle knowledge of the ocean and its many hazards. Anti-submarine warfare is a duel of technologies. Superior sonar or superior technologies to make a submarine more quiet are far more important than advances in weaponry like torpedoes. For this reason, the contest is waged in the laboratory as well as in the sea. Captain John Moore offers his view of the technological balance between NATO and Soviet submarines.
From the sonar point of view, I believe the West is measurably better off than the Soviets. From the propulsion point of view and speed, on the whole, the Soviets exceed ours. In the power density of their submarines is higher. Their noise element has been reduced over the years and is still reducing. So they're coming down more towards the Western standard. But I believe that generally the Western submarines are probably still in the ascendant, although it's very difficult to say this when one is not quite certain what the situation is with the latest submarines and their forms of propulsion. If they are, as I suspect they are, developing new forms of much more silent propulsion, then I think we are going to be in for a shock in the near future.
But the silent war is waged not only by machines, but by men as well. The American and British navies have extensive experience with submarines, to a degree lacking in the Soviet Union. Captain Richard Sharp comments on the roots of Western submarine advantages.
It's a very dangerous concept, this idea that because we appear to have some sort of edge in technical terms, and by that he's usually meant sonar performance, that therefore we automatically have an overall superiority. I think there is an overall superiority, but it is far more in terms of the quality of the men and of the training they get.
The technological race continues. As one group of engineers seeks to make the submarine visible to its hunters, Another group seeks to give the submarine new ways to hide from the prying ears of electronic sensors. While this scientific race goes on, the real contest continues in the ocean depths. At this very moment, the crews of 100 submarines continue their relentless hunt, hoping that the orders never come for them to unleash their deadly cargoes.